pretty sure staples back then didn't look like they do now.
They were giant screws. Yeah.
Yeah. We can call it stapling, but I don't think it was as sterile. Because I remember being a kid in school, and the dumb thing to do was to like see who could staple their hand. That's probably not what it was like.
Yeah. Well, when you can bifurcate your church, when that appeasement ended, and you have half the church that didn't have tongues because they were cut out, or that they're dead and their bones were burnt and they were declared anathemas by the mother church, then it's hard. And that it's another thing when we read about that, and we read that that's not just Catholic against Protestant. Sometimes that was Protestants against Protestants, and we need to be careful because of how this world is. It could, and I'm talking as an American and a part of a Western civilization, it could all crumble apart, and we could all fraction into our theocracy, and are we willing to burn people at the stake for not baptizing their children? And what do we do with that? Like, how do we view Christian history when Christianity became almost synonymous with the state? And we always have to be careful about that, because if Luther can get kicked out of his church, and then Calvin the same way, but for vastly different reasons, and at the same time Calvin has death threats against people in his own city. We always need to be careful of that, because we could, we're no different than those men, and so we need to recognize the planks and the barriers in our own eyes too, because if we're always looking to, oh well, our team's not in power now, let's just wait, are we really falling under the lordship of Christ, or are we trying to conform this world into our own image?
Right. Oh, I love that. That is a really good warning. I think we have an issue with that here. Before I got saved, actually, I was very politically minded. I would campaign and stuff for everybody. And so because that was my idol as a non-believer, when I became a believer, I was like, that was one of those things that had to just be completely and totally mortified in my life. But I do see it still, the idea of religious politics in it, and it is dangerous. I think that's a really good point, because beforehand, as a politically minded person, there was an enemy, right? Like the enemy was anyone who didn't agree with me politically. And so we can't have that mindset as a believer. Like you were saying, it wasn't just Catholics against Protestants, Protestants, Catholics. There were Anabaptists being drowned because they didn't feel the same way as some of the other people. And so it is important that we see church history in an honest light, because we can tend to make these people bigger than they were, right? More holier than they were, because we love their quotes and everything. But when you actually read the history, especially Martin Luther, boy, he was awfully salty. When you get to reading about him, you can kind of tell, like, oh, okay, he's kind of feisty like me. It's okay.
He was blunt.
Although he did have a theology of passing gas. So, I mean, you gotta give him credit.
I think that was because of the beer.
Yeah.